Expansion Seal Technologies P2 Plug Installation Training. This training video shows how to select proper plug size, prepare heat exchanger tubes, and install Expansion Seal Technologies high-pressure P2 plug. See the CPI PermaPlug training video to install CPI PermaPlugs. If plugs are purchased before it is possible to measure the actual tube ID, the proper plug size can either be determined from information in the heat exchanger data sheet or from prior experience with that heat exchanger. From the data sheet, take the tube OD and wall thickness and determine P2 sizes using either EST's sizing guide or the tube ID calculated using the following formula. Calculated ID equals tube OD minus 1.8 times wall thickness. Both of these methods will provide a good starting point for the outlet tube ends. Each P2 plug size is capable of expanding 20 thousandths of an inch, 0.5 millimeters. If the calculated tube ID is within 5 thousandths of an inch, or 0.13 millimeters of the top of the plug size range, order the next larger plug size to allow for required material removal during brushing. For example, if the calculated ID is 0.537 inches, select a 540 P2 plug size. The inlet tube diameter may be eroded as much as 3/32 of an inch or 2.38 millimeters due to wear caused by inlet fluid turbulence. It is always wise to have on hand plugs up to a few sizes larger than calculated, especially for an older heat exchanger. Obviously, if the heat exchanger is already open, it is best to measure the actual tube ID at the inlet and outlet. Be careful to remove any weld projection with a tapered reamer before measuring. If this is not done, you will find that you have ordered undersized plugs. When selecting P2 plugs, the plug material must match the tube material. Always prepare a tube before plug installation. The tube preparation tools are a tapered reamer to remove weld projection, a go, no-go gauge, and the proper size tube cleaning brush. A go, no-go gauge and tube cleaning brush corresponding to the plug size is supplied with each box of P2 plugs. Go, no-go gauges are also available in the form of a gauge kit. Gauge kits, additional brushes, and tapered reamers are ordered separately. Feed water heaters have rolled and welded tube-to-tube sheet joints. Fluid turbulence at the tube inlet erodes the tube wall more than the harder weld material. Over time, tube ID can be 3/32 inches or 2.38 millimeters larger than the weld entrance. The resulting weld projection must be removed using the tapered reamer because a plug that only fits past the weld projection will be too small to seal the tube, and the weld projection destroys the brush. When reaming, remove only enough weld material to clear the end of the tube. Do not over-ream. After tapered reaming, use the go, no-go gauge to confirm the correct brush size. If the small end fits into the hole but the large end does not, use the brush stamped with the same size. Do not assume each tube hole will be the same size. Gauge every tube end. The correct brush machines the tube to the brush OD. The use of Lubatube, a brush lubricant, greatly enhances the performance of the brushes in harder tube material. Never use a smaller or larger brush than indicated by the gauge. A smaller brush will not remove tube defects. An oversized brush may jam and break. Reversing the drill to remove a brush will loosen the bristles. An oversized brush will create deep grooves and leaks. Next, establish the correct installation depth. First, the plug must be installed in the rolled section of the tube sheet. Second, install the plug deep enough, 1 3/4 inches or 45 millimeters, to hide and protect the pin, but only if the tube sheet is at least 2 inches or 54.8 millimeters thick. If the tube sheet is less than 2 inches thick, the plug will have to be installed at a shallower depth and the pin may project beyond the tube sheet face. Be careful never to strike the exposed pin. For convenience, a reference mark may be made on plug positioner as shown. Marks should be removed at the completion of the job to prevent confusion the next time they are used. Caution: never install a P2 beyond the tube sheet, in the unrolled portion of the tube within the tube sheet, or over the grooves in a grooved tube sheet. Leaks will occur after thermal cycles. Using the go, no-go gauge, determine the brush size, then brush the tube end for 30 seconds using a slow, steady back and forth motion evenly along the length from the opening to the installation depth. Brushing serves three purposes. The brush sizes the hole and makes it round. It removes leak-causing surface defects. Brushing improves the grip between the plug and the tube. Always inspect to see that brushing has accomplished these objectives. Next, after blowing away the particles left from brushing, visually inspect the hole to see if it is defect-free. If there are still visible defects, repeat the brushing with the next larger size brush. Severe defects may require brushing with successively larger brushes to remove them. When moving up to a larger brush, never force the brush into the tube end. Allow the brush to do the work. Second, recheck the size of the brushed tube with the gauge. If the small end fits to the installation depth but the large end does not, install a P2 plug of the same size as the gauge. The tube preparation is complete. The steps taken were: Number 1. Remove weld droop with tapered reamer. Number 2. Use the go, no-go gauge to confirm the correct brush size. Number 3. Establish the correct installation depth, preferably at least 1 3/4 inches or 45 millimeters unless the tube sheet is thinner. Number 4. Brush to the installed depth using even back and forth motion for 30 seconds. Number 5. Inspect brushed hole to confirm that it is defect-free. Number 6. Re-gauge the brushed tube to confirm the correct plug size. We are now ready to install the plug. The plug may be installed with the small or large hydraulic ram, close quarters ram for plugs near the perimeter of a Hemi head heat exchanger, manual installation tool, or OPT tool for the most confining spaces. Channel head extensions are needed for narrow channel heads or when the dividing plate or wall is within 1 1/8 inch of the center line of the leaking tube. These extensions may also be used to operate the brushes. Each component of the pull rod assembly is stamped with an arrow and the plug sizes for which it may be used. Always make sure that the arrows are aligned so that they point to the plug, and be sure the pull rod and plug positioner are correct for the plug size being installed. Thread the P2 plug into the end of the pull rod assembly with a plug positioner arrow pointing to the plug. Remove the knurled nut and insert that end through the front of the ram. Secure the pull rod assembly with the knurled nut and install the safety cable with the lock nut. The hose must be tightened at both ends securely with gripping pliers. If this is not done, the pressure will lock up in the ram. The pressure can lock up either at the ram handle or where the hose is connected to the pump, depending upon which connection was not securely tightened. If this occurs, firmly retighten both ends with gripping pliers to release any trapped pressure before proceeding. Position the P2 plug in the tube at the desired installation depth. Support the ram and depress the hydraulic pump pedal to operate the ram until the breakaway pops. If the breakaway has not popped by the end of the ram stroke, release the pressure in the ram by depressing the other end of the hydraulic pump pedal. Then retighten the knurled knot and operate the pump until the breakaway pops. If the pin pulls through the ring, the plug positioner becomes stuck on the pin or the breakaway breaks on the wrong side. Then the plug that has been installed is either too small for the tube, has been installed in the unexpanded portion of the tube, or has been installed beyond the tube sheet. Remove the plug positioner. Remove the breakaway stub end, then remove the plug with a removal tool and correct the problem by brushing up and installing the next larger plug size. This must be done even if the plug passes a leak test. Failure to replace a plug that is too small will most certainly result in leaks after a short operating period, if not right away. When using the close quarters ram because of the limited headspace, follow the instructions for assembling the CQR pull rod assembly parts to the plug and insert them into the tube. Place the CQR over the tube and fasten the nut. When operating the pump, be sure to support the CQR by holding the hose connection so that the hose connection and ram are free to pivot away from the tube sheet surface. This will ensure a proper installation of the plug. When using the close quarters ram, the plug should always pop on the first stroke. If not, the plug is most likely undersized and should be removed. Correct the problem by brushing up and installing the next plug size. The only reasons for a plug leak are tube defects remaining after brushing that were not seen during inspection. The plug was undersized, installed in an unexpanded portion of the tube, or has been installed beyond the tube sheet. Leaking plugs must be removed and the installation procedure repeated. Correct the problem by brushing up and installing the next larger plug size in the rolled portion of the tube end. When the steps outlined in this video are completed properly, installation of P2 plugs is fast and easy. For additional technical support, please contact EST.